Now, we're up to the Azil Hu. Do we have the place? The Azil Hu, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up before the end of Lamed Amid Beis. The Azil Hu, Umekadesh Lola Chosa. It's very interesting that this fellow gave Kiddushin to one of two sisters. However, the Kiddushin was a suffix, it fell in between. And then he was Makadesh, her sister. As if to say he was hoping, maybe he was trying to be optimistic, that the first Kiddushin was not Chal, so that now he can marry her sister. He changed his mind. Now he sees to get a better deal with the other sister. And here I think you have the, I don't know if Mitchell have it, but I think, Jeff, you should have that, right? Jeff was here yesterday, right? So, Jeff, you have that page? Well, I can't hear you, but if you have the page that Steve photocopied, right? So then we have a a diagram here. So Mitch, you'll follow Balped. So you don't have to see it inside. Or maybe Jeff, you could send it to Mitch over WhatsApp. Maybe I don't have the time to do that right now. Okay, so what is the picture we're looking for? First of all, we're looking for what's called Shin Yud Gimel, right? So you'll see 3 diagrams on the page, and we're looking at the top one. Yeah? Okay. Okay, now I'm going to try to juggle 2 things at the same time. I'm going to, on the one hand, read the text in the commentary, and at the same time, to keep another eye, so to speak, on the diagram. Well, what's a good word for diagram? Is there another word for that? All right, we'll call it a diagram. Okay, there's probably a better word in English for it. So he says the following: Ruvain v'Shimon achim. So far that's easy stuff. There are 2 brothers, Ruvain and Shimon. And now he has V'nosat Shimon es Rivka, v'chein kiyas Shimon es Rachel. So again, Rivka now, it's a little bit different than the names we gave until now. Rivka is the one of the wives of Shimon that is not an erva whatsoever to Reuven. Right? She's all systems clear. But now Shimon was Mekadesh Rachel, who is one of the 15 arayos of Reuven, but he was Mekadesh Rachel with a Safei Kiddush. Safei Kiddush. Now, to complicate matters, there's a 3rd brother, but he's only a maternal brother. We'll call him Levi. And Levi shares a mother with Reuven and Shimon, but not a father. And in brackets, which again, you'll see this in the diagram, he says, Kigon, Shenises Sarah Imam. So, right, the mother, the common mother to both Reuven, Shimon, and Levi is Sarah. And Sarah was married to one man, and now she's married to another man. From the first husband, Sarah had Reuven and Shimon. From the second husband, she had Levi. Now, Mace also Adam. So if I understand correctly, the mother of all these three brothers, right, their maternal brothers, married now a second husband, who is the father of Levi, not the father of Reuben and Shimon. He's out of the picture. And now the father of Levi, Sarah's second husband, dies. Oh, I see. You know what? That we don't need all that. He's just organizing how she was married to two different husbands, and therefore she had Reuben and Shimon from one husband and Levi from another husband. We don't have to confuse ourselves with all that. That's pretty straightforward. Okay. Now, what happens is that Shimon gives Rachel, who's the erva to Reuven, a suffix kedushin. You remember that? Okay, now, so that's Rachel. Rachel is a suffix kedushin. You see that arrow that connects Shimon to Rachel in the middle of your diagram? So you'll see in small print, it's on top, on the left side of the arrow, it says Kiddushay Suffix. That should be bolded. I mean, because that's a key to understand this sugya, but it's very small in the print. Okay, now, Rachel and Leah are sisters. Do you see that they link that together with Horim, meaning that they both share the same parents? So we shouldn't get confused here, because Levi is only a half brother to Reuben and Shimon, but in the case of Rachel and Leah, they're full sisters. So Rachel and Leah, Baruch Hashem, we've many times had these names of two sisters named Rachel and Leah. We had it a million times. So this is not an exception. Now again, we said that Shimon was Makadesh Rachel with Kedushay Suffix. Now he goes ahead and he's Makadesh Leah. Like again, if I can add some psychology here, he's hoping that the Kiddushin to Rachel will not be recognized, because now he has his eye on Leah. Okay. Now we introduce another marriage to Leah, meaning a second attempt. The first attempt was that of Shimon. And Shimon's attempt to marry Leah is really besuffic, because it all depends upon whether Shimon successfully married Rachel. If he did, then in that event, Leah is an achos ishto. So the marriage to Leah would be invalid. Comes along Levi in this case, and he attempts to marry Leah. So Leah, I don't know, Leah is a little bit fickle here. I don't know who she is, but what she is, but she accepted Kiddushin from Shimon, and now she accepts Kiddushin from Levi. I don't know what she's thinking. I mean, the only way I could justify it is, let's say she's hoping that the marriage between Shimon and Rachel will be validated. Hence, the marriage between Shimon and Leah will be invalidated. So now Leah has another option to get married to Levi. Or maybe she's just covering her bases. She doesn't want to, this is the family she wants to marry into. So she wants to guarantee that she has a marriage partner. Whatever it might be, Leah accepted Kiddushin from both Shimon and Levi. That's what he writes here. V'holach Levi achiv shel Shimon tzad ha'em, v'kidesh af hu es Leah. So we have a bunch of sfeikos over here, and they're all interdependent. We have a suffix as to whether Shimon successfully married Rachel. Hence, we have another suffix as to whether he successfully married Leah. And we have a third suffix as to whether or not Levi married Leah. And again, it's all a string that's it's like a domino thing. If we come to the conclusion, for example, that the marriage between Shimon and Rachel was valid, and the Kiddushin came Karav Law, then Memela, Shimon is not married to Leah, but rather Levi is married to Leah. If, on the other hand, we come to the conclusion that it was Karav Law, and that the marriage between Shimon and Rachel was unsuccessful, then the marriage between Shimon and Leah is validated, and hence the marriage between Levi and Leah is unvalid. Do we have that more or less? Okay. Umitzad did Kiddushay Shimon b'Leah hem Kiddushay Safek, and I would say the same thing about Kiddushay Levi b'Leah. Is Mikevan Shakidusha Kini Shimon es Rachel mitfila v'Safek Meligam Kiddushay Leah Shiachosa Shel Rachel Havi b'Safek came in Shei Safek Achos Ishto Shel Shimon v'Lechein Gama Kiddusha Kiddush Levi es Leah aim b'Safek Shem Tafsu HaKiddush Shel Shimon b'Leah, which means that the Kiddushin to Rachel was invalid. Harei Eishes Achiv. Oh, now he adds another element into the equation. Just 1 second. But you have two brothers that have the same mother. I don't know if he's assuming now that Shimon is not alive, I guess. Well, Shimon, I don't know, Shimon's going to die, but I don't know exactly when he dies in the sequence of events here, but because he didn't mention exactly that.
I mean, I think they're saying Shimon dies before Levi
was Makadesh Leah. Yeah, because that's what because otherwise, why is he introducing Achos Eishes Achid? Okay. But in any event, still what we said before is, is Chai V'Kaya. It's correct that this is a Chadgad. The domino situation. Okay. Al Mikra Kazeh, Omra Gemara, Nachmir. Okay, so wait, let's just stop for a minute because we're gonna have to turn the page. But before we turn the page, what we're gonna say is that, and then again, all this is the Rabbanon, that we're going to recognize the marriage between Shimon and Rachel. Because again, Rachel is an erva of Reuven. So by recognizing that marriage between Reuven and Rachel, which Midrabbanan we're going to do that, and that's why we're going to block the possibility of Reuven being Miyabim, what's her name? Rivka, we called her, right? That was the other wife of Shimon. Yes, no, maybe, right? Rivka, just so we get the names. Okay, so that chumrah of recognizing the marriage between Shimon and Rachel is going to be Asi Lidei Takol. So let's read it inside. It says Al Yidei Shenachmer Lomar, and here we turn to Lamed Amud Beis on the next page. The Rivka Sarasa Shel Rachel Lotus Yabev. Okay, good. So we got the names right. Yuchal Lotzeis Mizei Takol Shenovel Lahakil Be'inyan Kiduche Levi. Right. So we get back to our domino theory. Once we recognize the marriage between Shimon and Rachel, as a result, we're going to disqualify the marriage between Levi and Leah. Right? Let's go over that one more time. Again, this is for me, not for you. I give you all the credit for hanging in there with me because you're probably sitting there saying, why does this person not review himself over and over again? But that's the nature of that's the name of the game. So again, by recognizing the marriage between Shimon and Rachel, then as a result, Shimon could not be married to Leah. And if Shimon can't be married to Leah, then Levi can be married. So why is that called the Takala? Let's just think for a second. If we recognize the marriage between Leah and Levi, just one second, give me a second. You recognize that marriage. Again, I'm just shooting from the hip over here, and I may be way off the mark, so bear with me, but I'm thinking to myself that by recognizing the marriage between Leah and Levi, if somebody comes along and marries Leah, you're going to throw him to the dogs. You're going to completely disqualify another person's marriage to Leah. And again, let's put in brackets here that Shimon died. So if Shimon died, then Leah could marry anyone, except for the fact that Levi is now married to Leah. And why is Levi married to Leah? The answer is because he recognized the marriage between Shimon and Rachel. So that's Asa the Beit HaKol. Again, if you have another shot, let me know.
And the other part is if we recognize it, then
recognize what? Again, Rachel and Ruvain?
Right.
I mean, Rachel and Shimon.
Yeah, Shimon. Then Rivka is eligible to marry anyone. So
no, but we had Choletzis Philopis Yabem. So in other words, when the Rabbanan made this Chumrah, what they were doing was excluding Yibum. And they were telling Reuven that he cannot be Miyabem Rachel. Did I get the name right? Yeah. He
Rivka.
Cannot, I'm sorry, Rivka, right? Thank you. He cannot be Miyabem Rivka because we recognize the marriage between Shimon and Rachel. But we're not going to undermine the Doraisa halacha. So Rivka is in trouble unless she gets Khalif. I don't know if that's an issue. So I think the Takola here is by recognizing the marriage between Levi and Leah, which might not be a marriage at all. I mean, it's on the rocks. We don't know which way to go. But by instituting this chumrah in which you recognize the marriage between Shimon and Rachel, then therefore you're going to recognize the marriage between Levi and Leah. And the takol in that is that if somebody else comes along and marries Leah, you're going to tell him to go fly a kite, that it's an invalid marriage. She's already married, which we don't know. She may be married, she may not be married. Now the Gemara says Inam. Okay, so this Inami apparently is going to introduce another diagram, which I think we'll have here on the second side of the page, right? Or I don't know, you have it on two sides of the page, right? Mm-hmm. And that should be number Shin Yud Dal. Yeah? I mean, it's hard to see it, but I think it says Shin Yud Dal. Mm-hmm. So that's called Inam. So again, what are we talking about now? We're talking about another scenario, which is Takola, in which we're being machmir to say that Rivka would not be allowed to have Yibum with Reuven, because L'chumra, we're recognizing the marriage between Shimon and Rachel. But now we're going to have a different scenario, that as a result of recognizing the marriage between Shimon and Rachel, and therefore establishing Rivka as a tsaras erva and blocking Yibum, we're going to have another takol. In what scenario will we have a takol? Zimnin, the ase acher umekarish lo l'dida Hiddushay Vada. So again, we're talking now about Rachel. Rachel received from Shimon a Safei Kiddushin. And we're saying now that although the Torah doesn't recognize that Safek Kedushin as valid, the Rabbanan did, hence requiring that Rivka get Chalitza and not allowing Rivka to fall for Yibum. So now you were Machmir, where the Torah was not, to recognize the Torah Safek, the marriage between Shimon and Rachel. Somebody else comes along from the Shuk, and he gives Kiddushay Vadai to Rachel. And Shimon right now is still alive. He hasn't died yet. He writes here, Kagon, Shaya Ruven Bas Ushma Rivka, Vinasa Shimon Achiv Shel Es Sarah. So Shimon married his niece Sarah, the daughter of Ruven. V'chein Kiddush Es Rivka, Bas Achiv, V'Kiddushay Safek. Wait a minute, who's Rivka? Rivka is the daughter of Ruven?
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute, that's a fastball on me. I don't think we had that until now. So what's going on here now? Both Sarah and Rivka, yeah, but one had Kiddushay Vade and the other had Kiddushay Safek. Had it? Yeah. So let's see. So Shimon married Sarah, and he Safek married Rivka. Both Sarah and Rivka are daughters of Reuven. And again, I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, I don't understand here. This is not at all similar to what we've been discussing. I mean, until now we said that on a Derais level there would be Yibum, but here, I mean, both Sarah and Rivka are begetter Ereva. Again, we're going to have to introduce another wife somewhere in the picture.
I don't think Torah is in Europe.
Oh, she's not?
No.
Oh, so Sarah is the one who's not in there. Oh, it confuses me a little bit with the names. So Rivka is the Ereva. To Rivka is the Ereva to Ruvain, and Sarah is not. So what are we going to do? We're going to recognize the marriage between Shimon and Rivka, that Suffolk marriage, such that Sarah becomes a Tzoras Ereva, and Choletzes Velomas Yabemis. Again, Choletzes because of the Raisa, and Velomas Yabemis because the Rabbanan recognized the marriage to Rivka, who's an Ereva to Reuven. Uba Adam min Ushma Avram. Kidesh Afhu es Rivka b'Kiddushay Vada. Umes Shimon below Bonin. Okay. Mitzad Adin, HaKiddushin shekidesh Avram es Rivka, Heim Kiddushay Safek, Kevan Shikfar Safek Mekudeshes L'Shimon. Kevan de Machmirim, the Asar La Mar Litzara, Sarah here means, what's her name? Sarah, okay. The Asal Amar Litzara Shel HaErva Shel Iskadsheh B'Kedushay Safek Liyabume Yimcha Lotzis Takol Chanoshim Yiru she'ein hatzara misyabemes. Amri, dekama kiddushin, that the first kiddushin of Shimon to Rivka, I guess, one second, what does he mean by dekama? Dekama is the first one, right? Amri, shekiddushin dekama, shekidesh abal es ishto, and now he drops names for some reason. Okay, shekidesh abal es ishto, heim kiddushin. So if I understand correctly, the spectator is going to assume that that we validate the marriage between Shimon and Rivka. And that's how they justify the ruling that was given by the Beis Din that Sarah could not be Misyabemes to Reuven. Okay, so now we're recognizing in the minds of the spectator, at least, the marriage between Shimon and Rivka. Umemele, Kiddushin de Basra, right? The Basra I thought was Avram. He says, but Hainu Obe Mikra Harishon Hakiddushin Shekidesh Shimon Atzmo Es Leah Chosish Rachel. Mikra Sheni Shekiddushin Kish Avram Es Rivka. Man, is this so confusing because he goes back to the previous case with all the names of the previous case. Now he goes to this case with all the names of this case. Anyway, Lav Kiddushin, right? So that the second Kiddushin is not going to be Chal, which in the first case means that Shimon himself was Makadesh, the sister, meaning Rachel, of Leah. I'm sorry, meaning after he's Makadesh Rachel with Kedushi Suffolk, he went ahead and was Makadesh Leah. Or in the second case, where Avram came along and he was Makadesh Lav Kiddushin. And all the entire source or cause, if you will, of this mistake is because of the Chumrah D'Rabbanan that Sarah will not be Misyabemes, right? And the spectator assumes that Sarah not being Misyabemes is a result of the fact that the Kiddushin of Shimon to Rivka is valid. And that's going to cause a takala, because if the Kiddushin of Shimon to Rachel, or in the second case to Rivka, what was in the second case? Which was the suffix in the second case? Was that Rivka? Okay, good. So Rachel in the first case and Rivka in the second case, just to confuse you, is Lav Kiddushin. Lav Kiddushin means the second one, the Basra, right? Because the Kama is Kiddushin, that's Shimon, and the Basra, we call them Avram in that second case, is not Kiddushin. Shevimikra Rishon Yomru she'ein Kiddushay Shimon Tosim V'Leah. Why? Because of Achos Ishto, he's married already to Rachel. Mikra Sheni Yomru she'ein Kiddushav Shal Avram Tosim L'Fishim Mekudeshes L'Shimon. And he, I think, here refers to Rivka. Am I right? And then now what's the chash? Let's see if we guessed it right. Yesh lachshod shema yavo lahatir safek iser kares. So he's not talking about what I said. Somebody else comes along and marries him. Often a rishon achshashu shem mitoch kaf yomru shakidushin shekidesh Leah, kidesh levius Leah, heim kedushin gemurin shekevan shekedushin shimon b'Leah lo tafsu. Right, that's because we recognize the marriage to Rachel. Is lachein ein Leah neseres lo. But there's too many. 1 second. Ein Leah. Oh, who's the low here? This is the guy from the Shuk. 1 second. They use pronouns. Lachein ein Leah seres. Why hoil? Duchi. Leah. Lo tafsu. Oh, and now Levi. This is the first case where Levi comes along and he marries Leah? Or is this the second case where Avraham comes along and marries Leah? Keduche Shimon Leah lo tafsu. Lachein ein Leah neseres. Which means that now you should recognize the Kedushin to Leah. So I think we're going back to the first case now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is the first case. So now we're going to recognize the marriage of Levi. Correct? Let's just go over that one more time. If we recognize the marriage to Rachel, and as far as Leah is concerned, she's married to Levi. So I assume when he says Ein Leah Neseres Lo, the word lo here is referring to Levi. He just left out a yud at the end of the word lo. Anyway, I'm just joking. But anyway, Afshel Fia MS, Kevin Shigidusha Rachel have the Suffolk, which maybe Gam Shumel Lev Suffolk, will hang up. Gam Future Levi Belea himself. And we're going to assume what? That the Kedusha mistakenly assume that the Kedushim of Levi are valid. Just let me just make the calculation more. Recognize the Kedushin to Rachel. Therefore, the Kedushin of Levi is valid. When in truth, the Kedushin of Levi is only a suffix. A suffix mitzada ein. Now we get to the Takola finally. Sheyavo lahatir loes Leah. Oh, I see. Yeah, I was always bothered why Levi was a brother to Shimon, and the answer is because if he consummates his marriage, then he might be having violating a chiyuv kares of Eshes Achiv. Because we really don't know whether Leah is married to Shimon or not. We're going to assume that Levi carte blanche, he has a license to marry Leah because we've recognized the marriage to Rachel, and that means that Leah is not married to Shimon. Shema Yomru Shakidushin Shakidish Avram Es Rivka Enom Kidushin. Mikevon Sheik Haisa Kvar Mekudeshes L'Shimon Bishasha Kidsha. Let's just understand this again. So now we're going to say that Rivka was the erva to Reuven, correct? Mm-hmm. And now we're saying that in order to block Yibum to Sarah, I think if I got that name correct, you're going to assume that there's a valid marriage to Rivka. And if it's valid marriage to Rivka, then Avram's marriage to Rivka is Einam Kedushin. Okay? Einam Kedushin. That's good. When in fact, she is a suffix b'kudeshes Tavram, uliachar misaso shel Shimon, yavo lahater osol l'shuk, aflish v'yemes, he suffix ishto shel Avram, he gave us kedusha Shimon ba havi suffix. So what's the takola here? We're going to be matir l'shuk, because we're going to assume that Avram's kedushin to Rivka is not valid. So now Shimon's out of the picture. He died, and Avram's out of the picture because Avram could not effectuate a kedushin to who are we talking about? Leah?
Rivka.
To Rivka. I'm sorry, to Rivka, because Rivka was married to Shimon. One second, wait, Shimon. And the kedusha was during Shimon's lifetime. And we have to add that. Okay. Now we're on the top of Lamed Aleph. Let's see what happens here. So now the Gemara is going to try to defend. I think it's Rabbah against the onslaught here. Mitaretz Gemara she'ein. Oh, you don't have this. There's no diagram on this page. Oh, all right. I'll just read it out. Mitaretz Gemara ein lochush shema yomru elu sheyiru. Right, we're not afraid of the spectators coming to the wrong conclusion. She'enu misyabemes she'kedusha erva amivade kedushin. Right, the spectator is a big lump. Right, that's what you're telling me. He sees that the Rabbanan are not allowing yibum to take place, and therefore it must be that the kedusha erva avade kedushin. Right? No. All that is wrong. Kevan de kamatsu chalitza made the other de chumra b'alma. In other words, if they would block Yibum and say that's it, she's free to marry anyone, she doesn't need chalitza, then they would walk away with the mistaken impression that we recognize the marriage to the Erev. But since we're requiring chalitza, they understand that much of a Talmud Chachma they have, that it's only a chumra b'alma. That really she does fall for Yibum, and the Rabbanan being Machmir, and therefore they can understand that what? Just 1 second. And the Takola would be if they walk away with the assumption that the Kedusha Erva are Vade Kedusha. Right, that's going to cause a whole stream, a whole avalanche. But they're not going to assume it's Vade Kedushin, because otherwise, why is she requiring Chalitza? It's Vade Kedushin, she's a Tzaras Erva. So they're going to assume that there's a tzad to say that there's no Kedushin. And therefore she should be Misyabem. So it's only a Chumra B'Alma, and Haraya, she needs Chalitza. Gemara says, if that be the case, then Gerushin Nami listening. Okay, now we get back to our original question that Rabbah was meant to resolve, and that is in the Mishnah in the case of Safek Gerushin. Why didn't it have a case of Safek or of Lo, Safek or of Lo? And let's just review in our minds where was the chazak in that case it was to allow, just 1 second. It was that would allow Yibum, correct? It was the Chazaka that she's Yevamot. If we're validating the Kiddushin, that means that we would be undermining the Chazak of Hetel Shuk. But in the case of Gerushin, if we were to validate Gerushin, then she falls for Yibum. Second. I'm going to read the commentary. He says, "Ihachi shebesafek Kiddushin ichmiru afal pishu muteres liyavam yesh lacheskes hetel yom mikomakom misafek lo tisyabim v'lo chashashu shemiyomru she'enes kukul yavam." Why? Because they saw that she needed chalitza. So if so, in the case of safek gerushin nami listening, again, a suffix of Zarak law get, suffix of law, suffix of law, and she requires Chalisa. Jafal Pisha Cheskes Heter Omeres. She'ena Tzricha Yibum v'Chalitza. Why? Because we don't know that the get was valid, and therefore she remains in her status of Muteres L'Shuk. And why is she Muteres L'Shuk? Because she's not a Tzaras Erva. I'm sorry, because she is a Tzaras Erva, is mikol makom misafek nachmir v'nitz b'litzrecha chalitza. Let's require chalitza, and just like in the case of Safek Kiddushin, even though she has a cheskes hetel yavam, we were machmir, we blocked evil, and we required chalitza. And we're not afraid that in the minds of the spectator, the fact that we blocked Yibum is not going to be a problem of a takal, because they can understand that she needs chalitza. So here too, litzrecha chalitza. If they see that Sarah is choletzes, which I think we called her Sarah, if I'm not mistaken, but anyway, is Yomru shatam she choletzes mishum shagerishin shel ha'erva chalu. The Eina Tzaras Erva, if we validate the Gerishin to the Erva, then she Sarah is not a Tzaras Erva. She's not a Tzaras Erva. That's why she requires Chalitza. Just 1 second. So again, what would be the possibility of a Takola here? People are going to say that the Gerishin was valid, and she's not a Tzaras Erva. What's the Takola? If Adam in Ashuki Kadesh Bechaya Baal, that Erva what that received Gerishin, Kadesh Sachosa, is Kavan Sheichashvu Shigureshes, Yomru Shein Kibuch Tovtzava Chotza, Bishiyachos Ishto. Yatira Sachosa Likshuk below get. Af Shalafia Emes he Suffolk Beshes, Kevin Shagerish and Shalchosem Suffolk, we talk Shiru She'ena Misya Bemes, who made a Yadi, the Chumra Bialmu, that her Chalitz is only a Chumra. is memela lo yavo lahatir es achosa l'shuk. Im niskad shali osa adam shekidish es achos ha'erev. So the Gemara is now proven that through this chalitza we will solve the problem of achosim and ashuk. If the same person with Bekadesh Achosa, so the Gemara answers, you're right. Enochinami, ein lochush shema mitoch sheyiru choletzes, yomu shechalu agerish, achol yesh lochush, she'im ato machmir v'omer choletzes, sofek yavo lomar shehiaf misyabemes. Right, because the Yevamot has two choices: you can kind of mitzvah yibum or of chalitza. And generally speaking, that's what Yevamot is. She falls for both chalitza or for yibum. So therefore, when they see that she has chalitza, they're going to say that she's ru'uya af lisyabim. Is kan arei asura lisyabim meikar adin lefishi becheskas saras erva. Amuteres l'shuk v'tavar be'iser kares v'lachein lo nachmer olav shetichlot shish bitoch kach yuchal lavo michshel shel iser sheyavo af la'atira liyav. So again, the Gemara is going through all the different possible, scenarios and showing that in each case there's going to be a possibility of a michshel, and that's going to defend Rabba's approach that the Mishnah deliberately omitted a case of Sofek Karav Lo in Gerish. Okay, then, so we'll stop here, and we wish you a great day. Thank you so much.